I'm very happy to be here to talk about Shirley Yamaguchi. But this name is quite unknown in Japan. So Japanese like to call her Ri Koran, or Chinese way, Li Shanlan. So, moment. At first, I'd like to read my paper, already written, prepared. I talk reading about the outline of the life of Shirley Yamaguchi, and then I'd like to show you, showing some DVD clip, the highlight scenes of her works from Manchurian period to her later documentaries, showing the very rare television images of her documentary on Palestine refugee camp. Yeah. So I'd like to read my paper at first. In her long and notorious life, she frequently changed her name. She changed her language, her lovers and husbands. She changed her movie production companies, just as she changed her political and ideological positions. And she finally seems to have changed her nationality to disassociate herself from any sense of belonging. To search for her true identity seems to me akin to an experiment of reading Thomas Pynchon's novel, mysterious novel, V. Yamaguchi Yoshiko, his real name. Ri Koran, the Japanese version. Li Shanlan in the Mandarin. Shirley Yamaguchi in Hollywood. Lei Honglan in Cantonese Hong Kong. Madame Yoshiko Otaka, officially as the wife of a diplomat. Jamila, it is given by Chairman Arafat in 1970. How many aliases has she had when she died last September at the age 94? She lived very long. Japanese militarists called her a friendly, good China girl. Kuomintang officers criticized her as Han-chan, a national traitor. Hollywood treated her gently as a cute Oriental girl who visited Hollywood to learn how to kiss. Japanese post-war moviegoers regarded her a neat and innocent Kurosawa actress. Hong Kong audience believed her to be a Chinese movie star with pure Mandarin Chinese and a beautiful soprano voice. The government of the United States once believed the rumor that she was a communist spy from Red China. She stayed at Yangon as a wife of a Japanese diplomat and got close to Aung San Suu Kyi when she was a young girl. Chairman Arafat of PLO gave her an Arabic name, Jamila, expressing his thanks for her devotion to the Palestine refugee camps. Bernardo Bertolucci, an Italian director, Bernardo Bertolucci, in preparation of his film on the last emperor of Manchukuo, cut all the shots of her appearance from the film due to confusion of her life and career. Perhaps Li Shanlan, Shirley Yamaguchi, is one of the most notorious, I say notorious, and mysterious women in the 20th century's East Asia, whose polyalesis life is rich with coquetry and betrayal. Li Shanlan, I think this is the most popular name in the film history. Li Shanlan was born in 1920 in a small village in Manchuria, today's northeast China. And she started her career as an actress at age 18 in 1938 at the Manchurian Film Association. Manchurian Film Association, abbreviated as MAN-A in Japanese. She was born between Japanese parents, but pretended to be a Chinese to become a movie star. Her father was fluent in Chinese and taught her Mandarin. Li Shanlan moved to Japan, her secret home country, in 1939 and appeared in 3 melodrama films produced within the ideological context of Japanese militarism. Her roles in China Nights was of a cute Chinese girl with a patriotic and anti-Japanese stance, born from a good family of Shanghai. That woman protagonist, she accidentally falls in love with a handsome Japanese sailor of Hasegawa Kazuo, and soon, under his influence, she's tamed by his love and faith. She regrets misunderstanding the Japanese and seeks to become a true Japanese woman of elegance and modesty and starts studying Japanese, wearing a kimono. She admires her lover all the more because, this is the important point, because he slaps her cheek to enforce the belief that Japanese invention of China is right and justified. This is important, that she falls in love with that Japanese because he slaps her. In another film, Li Shanlan plays a role of Chinese singer who studies in Japan and joins in resistance movement against Japan. She likes the character she plays in China Nights, also converts after meeting a gentle Japanese engineer. When Japan surrendered in 1945, Li Shanlan was arrested by Kuomintang in Shanghai. Nobody doubted that she was an authentic Chinese. The Kuomintang court, first tried to sentence her to death for her anti-Chinese activity as a wartime movie actress. But as her true nationality of Japan was discovered, they could not apply hanchan, the penalty for national traitors. The Kuomintang court finally decided that she was not lawfully responsible, but her crimes are of a moral indictment. In exchange of swearing not to use her stage name, Li Shanlan, ever again, she was released to Japan. Li Shanlan returned to Japan and the film industry using her real Japanese name, Yamaguchi Yoshiko. Yamaguchi spent more than 10 years as a splendid movie star, busily working between Japan and Hollywood. She married a young Japanese diplomat and retired from the movie scene in 1957. Yet her passion to entertain never stopped as she returned to the screen in the late 1960s as a TV reporter. She subsequently directed 3 documentaries on Palestinian issues and the Japanese Red Army in the early 1970s. And so Yamaguchi received prizes for the effort. She worked in Congress for 18 years of the congresswoman of Jiminto Party, and belonging to the Tanaka School. It was the last year in 2014 that she finally died at the age of 94. I have published 2 books on her life and films. Personally speaking, I frequently visited her apartment in the late 1990s. And her apartment was in the very center of Tokyo, Ichibancho, near the palace, Imperial Palace. Entering the living room, the first thing I saw was calligraphy by Pu Chen. The last emperor, Pu Yi's brother. Chairman Arafat's portrait was also displayed. She introduced me into her bedroom when I saw a big photograph of herself wearing a kimono with Kim Il-sung of North Korea. It was shot in the early 1970s when she visited Pyongyang for the documentary Hello Pyongyang or something. During the interview, she never mentioned her memories of her time in Manchuria because it is, she has already published 2 books of autobiography on the Manchurian period. Instead, her interest in our conversation focused on the problem of sex slaves in wartime Japan, Jugu Ianfu, and the possibility of Palestinian liberation. At the time of the interview, I remember that she was reading a book of Edward W. Said. She got worried to hear the news that Said suffered cancer of blood, and she intended to write a letter to Professor Said. Yomota-san, please let me know his address or something. And I said, oh, okay, the Kent Hall, Columbia University is enough, blah, 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 blah. So her checkered life became the subject of a famous musical Ri Koran. The anti-war musical was performed with success not only in Japan, but also in many other Asian countries, including Singapore and Northeast China, ex-Manchuria. Li Shanlan became a mythological figure of 20th century's East Asia. So now I'd like to show you some highlight scene of her works. Just a moment, please. First, I will show you some scenes of China nights. Maybe the audience, some of you have already seen in this theater. This is I will show you the beginning, how the Li Shanlan, the orphan, will meet the Hasegawa Kazuya.
照样买。失礼。钱的。
Next one. This is Shanghai in 1937, just after the invasion of Japanese army. One Japanese misunderstands her as a prostitute. Calm down. All of us are Japanese, and all the Chinese are watching us. Behave well. I wonder if the Chinese will get a bad impression about the Japanese, so calm down, please. I don't owe nothing to Japanese, especially not Japanese.
まあつまり一口に言えば助けておいてこのまま行き回りじゃ困るって。
他违禁我花了钱。
あげられってやつだな。金でもよく
I have to say thank you or express my thankful emotion to you.
違うんだよ。つまりあの人兄貴だな。自分は兄貴のために、恩になった。つまり兄貴は
You Japanese
兄貴にそんな自分は
helped me, but I don't like to owe
你们带我去叫我做什么活吧？
だから兄貴のうち行って用事でも何でもする、洗濯でも何でもしてその金払ってこういう話なんだ。めんどくさいことはいらないって。
I'll be a maid, housemaid in your
我不是
apartment.
本心接受了日本人的恩。
おい、聞かねえよ。ことに日本人の恩にはなりたくねえって言うんだ。
Why? Especially not
日
Japanese?
本人だから嫌だ。ああ。
Why you hate
相当な
Japanese?
日派の女らしいね。
And then this orphan girl was picked up in an apartment where only Japanese resident.
みんなよってたかって私を騙そうとしてるんだ。
And someday she find out all the Japanese are so tender and kind to her, then she must be cheated or something, and she get irritated, and then slapping.
ケイラ、僕はとうとう君を殴った。
Oh, I finally hit you.
僕の負けだ。自分
I'm
の
defeated.
力を信じすぎた罰だ。
I'm arrogant enough.
僕は滑稽なうぬぼれやった。
I'm a ridiculous.
許してくれ。
Forgive me. I hit you.
君の好きなところへ行ってくれ。
Go anywhere you like.
ケイラをどこへもやらないで。ケイラを許して。
Please let me stay here. And this is a very famous movie, China Nights, and the very famous scene of slapping. And this is the main reason that after the Japanese surrender, Kuomintang court tried to sentence her as Han-chan, national traitors. You know, to appear as, to play the role of Chinese lover for the Japanese sailor, it is not so serious. But in this melodrama, she got slapped and then fell in love, especially after the slapping. This is very humiliation as for the Chinese people, to be slapped, to be raped, and then to fall in love. This one scene is very important for the Kuomintang people. But of course, you know, in those days, Japanese audience or Japanese staffs and the directors, and also the Ri Koran herself, could not understand the serious meaning. This is a very typical melodrama between China and Japan, and then legitimate the Japanese invention in Shanghai. You know, this film is typical ideology for the Japanese nationalism and imperialism. But especially the scenes of slapping is very serious meaning for the Chinese audience and intellectuals. And then I'd like to show you the very typically Manchurian films, accidentally discovered recently. It was shot in 1943 by Shimazu Yasujiro, the Japanese director who visited in Manchuria. And then the title is Russian, Moi Sarabai, My Nightingale, Watashi no Uguisu. This film was produced by the Japanese leftist leftist theorist and intellectual is Iwasaki Tsutomu, who was in jail for a long time. And then he got released and then became a kind of exile in Manchuria. Manchukuo is the only one place for the Japanese left intellectuals to escape from the mainland Japan. And then Iwasaki produced this film, Moi Sakurai, My Nightingale, and then asked Li Shanran as a protagonist. And you know, the Manchuria was a very interesting country, the very artificial empire, gathering many races, many ethnic groups, including Jewish and Russians. You know, after the Russian revolutions, many Jewish Russians escaped to stay in Manchuria as exile. And then they are very intellectual and very, very good for the artistic imagination. And they found the orchestra, Harbin Orchestra in the Harbin city, where many Japanese musicians studied and learned the Western classical music. Harbin was one of the center of Western civilization, Western culture for Japanese intellectuals and artists. And the story that is this way, in 1910s, one Japanese immigrant family was attacked by the bandit, and then only one little girl was survived, and she was picked up by a very kind Russian musicians or stage director. Also, they are the exiles, and they stayed in Harbin city. And then the little girl orphan called the Russian name again, Maria, and grown up as a Russian girl to become a soprano singer. And then the father or father-in-law opened the opera house, and this is the debut for the Maria to sing, to show her soprano voice. But unfortunately, she sang the song dedicated to the emperor, Russian emperor. And it was a scandal because there are so many red communist Russia in the Harbin city, and then tried to destroy the opera city because of reactionary behaviors. And then, so when the opera city was broken, and then so Maria turned out to be a flower-selling girl in the downtown. There's no, you know, they lost all the possibility to sing again. And then Maria and his father-in-law are very depressed time. And then when suddenly in 1930s, Japanese army invaded to Manchuria to to recover the order again in the place. And all the Russians, the Soviets, Russians are purged. And then the peace will set again. And this is the time that they could open the opera house again, the happy ending. And then at the last, when the father-in-law confessed the truth that Maria was born Japanese, and then she should come back to Japan, the country where God lives. And this is the typical melodrama, and also the musical. And surprisingly, this film is spoken completely in Russian, no Japanese, no Chinese. You know, this is, you know, Iwasaki's idea to produce Russian films in Manchuria, showing the cultural polyphony in Manchukuo. This is a very leftist idea. But after, you know, when Japan was surrendered and Manchuria disappeared, Iwasaki returned to Tokyo, and then to become one of the very core member of intellectuals of Japanese Communist Party. But he never mentioned his Manchurian period. Okay, so I'd like to show you. Wake up, Dmitry. Why Japanese army? Maria is safe. Harbin City in 1931. So this film is very rare to be seen, but actually, I accidentally discovered very recently. And then one thing I'm very glad to tell you that the set, artistic set is very splendid, and this is done by one Japanese staff, Ito Kyo, and I'm very happy to have his nephew here among the audience. One of the representative Japanese-American artists, Shinohara Ushio, maestro over there, nephew. ありがとうございます。ゆちゃん、ありがとうございます。And then I'd like to show you the Ri Koran become very famous in not only Manchuria and Japan, but also she appeared in Korean films and Taiwanese films, playing the role of Aborigine people, a beautiful girl. And then it was in 1943 that her name became very famous all through the mainland of China, even in the communism side and the Kuomintang side, because of the one film, The Opium War, or Eternal Flavor. It was produced in Shanghai. I'd like to show you this is a story in talk of the 100-year centenary of the Opium War. In 1842, the English Navy, British Navy, tried to invade Canton to sell opium, and then the one Chinese tried to prevent the opium selling, and then there's a war called the Opium War, and then Chinese and also Japanese producers are interested in shooting the film in the Opium War, And I will show you the Chinese version. But besides this, Hara Setsuko appeared in the Japanese version. And I will show you the Li Shanlan plays a role of a little girl who tried to prevent the opium selling in the places, so quartier reserve. And then I hope that you will enjoy the soprano voices of Li Shanlan. Well, moment. Now she's singing how dangerous to keep poison of opiums. Poison your health. So you immediately get rid of smoking opiums. Instead, I will give you some candy. They are from London, opium dealer.
抽烟就不是人，是个鬼。什么？你敢骂我们的客人？
你给我滚出去！这个地方永远不许你再来！哼，不来就不来，我本来就不愿意到这个黑暗的地狱里来。他说什么？
说。
Now I'd like to show you the Li Shanlan also appeared as a role of Taiwanese Aborigine cute girl in the mountain district of Taiwan, and teaching all the boys a Japanese language. What is your name? You have a Japanese name? What day of the week today is today? What day of the week? Yes. Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. What is the day of the May the 5th? Day for boys. So this is Li Shanlan's Taiwanese girl. The title is Bells of Saiyong, and the intention of this film is tame the mountain people in Taiwan. But Taiwanese people, audience, are very welcomed the film, and then after, in the Kuomintang's period in 1947 or 8, Taiwanese producer remade the film again, showing the Japanese flag at the end. Yeah, and then, so my wife is a specialist of Taiwanese culture. I did the interview with the producer, at that time very old, and then the producer replied to her, the meaning of the remaking of the film, Bells of Saiyong, is to show the Japanese flag as a close-up in the last scene, against, as for the resistance against Kuomintang. Well, so I'd like to show you after 1945, after the surrender of Japan, the GHQ, CIE, controlled all the Japanese films. And then the quality and also ideology of Japanese films completely changed. And I'd like to show you the very interesting example, a film written, directed by Kimisaburo, Kosaburo Yoshimura, The Shining Days of My Life. And it was in 1948. The Ri Koran was now playing the role of hostess woman in the cabaret nightclub. Her family was very rich before the war, and then his father was a minister, foreign minister or something, but he was assassinated in the wartime, and then the family crashed, and this is why now Ri Koran was become the cabaret singer or something. So I'd like to show you how the film changed after the war.
しまいそう。
それに元気だなっているんだよ。
何の？
お前さん、新入りなら新入りらしく一応挨拶してもらいたいね。
Ri Koran is a newcomer of a nightclub. This is Ri Koran,
何言ってるの
Shirley.
挨拶が聞いて呆れるよ。名前が分かんなきゃ名札見てよ。字は読めるんだろ。
聞いたふうなこと言ったね。もう一遍言ってみな。もう一遍。
ああ。
So then the cat's fighting starts.
お前さんに挨拶しなきゃ働けねえような女とはちっとばかりわけが違うんだよ。
ふざけやがってく。よしな緑。
やらしとけやらしとけ。手を挙げたね。
やったな。ちくしょ。何さこの女。
So this is the film, typical film just after the war. You could imagine how the difference between the war, before the war and after the war. And I will show you another. Yes, Ri Koran or Yamaguchi Yoshiko now was very ambitious, and she was not content as only a movie star in Japan, and then she decided to move to Hollywood to get a connection of King Vidya to appear in East is East. The another title is Japanese War Bride. Wow.
話って何？
軍人は信用を持つべし。多分おめえさん。没关系。
あそこまで逃げて。I would observe the etiquette.
Oh, it's you, huh?
It's Korean War and the hospital in Japan
Yeah.
for American Army
How long
base.
have I been here, anyhow?
A month, perhaps a little less. I do not know.
How long have you been coming to cheer me up?
2 weeks tomorrow.
I wondered if you'd remember the date the same as I did.
I would observe the etiquette in your country, Jim.
Honey, there isn't any etiquette in my country. At least not like this.
No?
No. No, you just be you, that's all that's necessary. You realize this is the first time we've been alone?
So you may understand the structure of this film, East by East, Japanese War Bride, looks similar of the structure of China Night. China night, Japan occupied Shanghai, and the Japanese boy will pick up the Chinese woman. And this, the United States occupied Tokyo, and then American soldiers pick up the Japanese girl. The structure is the same.
Hello, son. Oh, yes, well, it's great to be back. Gee, you look just the same as ever.
Hi, Jim.
Oh, hello, Ted. How are you? Geez, you're a big guy, isn't he? Oh, excuse me, honey. Dad, this is Ty. Welcome home. Hi. And this young squirt is my brother, Ted.
So this is a very typical American Hollywood in 1950s, and there's nothing strange except the Ri Koran appeared, the Japanese war bride. But later, the plot line, I'll explain to you that they are fighting, invisible fighting between the ex-girlfriend of the husband and Ri Koran, Shirley Yamaguchi. And their happy end. But I will show you another Hollywood film, House of Bamboo, and it was almost canceled to be released in Japan, and the Japanese intellectuals, the critics, got offended to see the preparation room, the Samuel Fuller's film, House of Bamboo, and then they called it national shame. Yeah, I will show you the Japanese national shame films by, the Samuel Fuller. Well.
Hello?
Huh?
This is Japanese Tokyo's downtown, Tsukishima. The public bath. What are you talking? I can understand your language.
I'm looking for Mariko Nagoya Weber. You see, she is in there. Well, I want to go in there and talk to her. You understand? I just want to go in there and talk. I want to go in and talk to her. Look, Mariko Nagoya.
You should not enter. This is
Is
women's.
she in there? Mariko Nagoya. That's right, Mariko Nagoya. Look.
I find something very enigmatic in this film. So this is a very funny film, and when Samuel Fuller later, visits Tokyo, I interviewed with him, and then he almost forgot any kind of thing, but the only Japanese he remembered is Ichiban. I mean, the number one. And then Samuel Fuller told me that he was called Ichiban, number one director in Hollywood or something, but he forgot all the things. And I cannot ask her in details or small meaning of this kind of taking birth thing or something. Okay, so then, in Hollywood, Shirley Yamaguchi appeared in 2 films and then got married with a very eminent sculptor, Isamu Noguchi, and then got divorced, and then got married again with young diplomats of a Japanese embassy. And then she retired, or she seems to retire, but is, that his ambition to appear herself was very strong. And finally, in the late 60s, she appeared again in the Japanese television and to become a documentarist in Vietnam and Beijing, and finally Palestine. She frequently visited Palestine for 3 years and shoots a documentary of Japanese Red Army, also Palestine refugees. I'd like to show you the very rare films. The source is directly from Ri Koran herself.
その程度なんですけど、
ここにイスラエルという国が今ございます
This
ね。
is the country Israel.
もうこれは24年前までには
This is very new
地図の上
countries.
になかった国なんですよ。
ああ、そうですね。
It appears
それは
suddenly
シオニス
in
ト
some 28 years
シ
ago
オ
by
ニズムを信じる
Zionists.
ユダヤ人のために1948年に国連で決議されて
This
生まれた国
country
なんで
was
すね。
founded in 1948 by Zionists.
この一
But
帯は
before
パレスチナ
there
人
lived Palestine people
そして
and
パレ
Jewish
スチナ
together.
人が住んでいたんですよ。でこのイスラエルという国が生まれたために現在そのパレスチナ人は
Because of the foundation of Islam country, as many Palestinians became a refugee and spending a very miserable life in Jordan, Lebanon, and Gaza.
Most of the people, because
And this is the interview of the so-called Queen of Hijack, Laila Halid,
all these sacrifices from
school
the people.
teacher
It's-
who did the
it's
hijack
not
so many times. Now she is a minister of
away
feminism or something in
or
Palestine.
something like that.
ما بتعرف فلسطين؟
This is Sabra or Shatira in Beirut. But this is very famous for the genocide in 1980s.
70のおじいさんも必ず帰るパレスチナへと語るんでした。
We should return to our country, the
何
old
かき
man
っか
told
けがあれ
me.
ば大戦争になる可能性を持つ中東の危機、その末端を担う人々がこう
Boys
して
and girls are
真摯な
now
心で
learning
作り出さ
how
れてい
to
くのです。
fight against the Zionists. And so she did an interview with many people, Ghassan Kanahani, Arafat, Laila Halid, or so many people, PLO and PFLP. And she got prize award by Japanese
訓
television
練を受けてると思うとね、
as a
辛い
documentarist.
思いで見てる。
And then it was 1974 when the Prime Minister Tanaka recommended her to become a congresswoman, and then she's been, she won in the vote, and then she's been congresswoman for 18 years. So in her life was divided by two parts, 18 years for actress, and another 18 years for congresswoman. And then as for congresswoman, she did so many things. For example, the friendship with Palestine people, or Japanese supporting for a refugee camp. And also she was always against of the Yasukuni Shinto shrine, such kind of militarism. And then she visited North Korea, China, and Palestine, with so many people, so-called the third world. And then, as for the consoling woman, sex slave in today's world, she was one of the founding member of the foundation of Japanese Femininity for something. I don't know the English title, but in Japanese, Asia Heiwa Kikin or something, to support financially the ex-victims of the Japanese militarism, with the ex-prime minister Murayama and the philosopher Shunsuke Tsurumi, or these many people. And so she did so many things for refugees or so-called subaltern people without voices. And then she retired all of the political works and published 2 books of autobiography. And then, based on the autobiography, there appeared the musical Li Shanla, and it was a very big hit in all through in East Asia, including Manchurian-born and Japan. That's her life. And then this is a scene this is the TV program, the Ri Shanla coming home in Manchuria by NHK.
中国を代表する石炭の町です。
でもあれは古いうちですね。
At this time, she was 80 years old. And now she's approaching to her home.
我住过这个地方啊，很
I once lived around here.
哎，东六条，就是这条吧？东六条啊，您记得呀？
Where is 6th Street East?
什么？
What is that building?
艺术馆啊，几十年，
The Public Culture Center.
60、70年的啊。日本盖的啊。ああ、そうなん。あそこは日本が作った。日本。
Okay, I prepared so many material, but the time is very tight, and it's very pity that I have to finish it. Thank you very much.